Good evening, everyone. So today, because my topic is natural law, and I'm thinking, next month you will have Professor Thomas to talk about natural law in Thomas Aquinas. How about I tell you something about the background, how natural law actually started as a Greek concept, then slowly how it been adapted into the Christian context. So, I first quote from the Catholic Encyclopedia something, and from Thomas Aquinas something about natural law. First, natural law is a rule of conduct which is prescribed to us by the Creator in the constitution of the nature with which He has endowed us. I think here there are some notions that we need to pay attention. Is natural law is the rule of conduct, and it is prescribed to us by the Creator. And again, then that is, it's basically just everything here is important, and it is in the constitution of nature. It is built in the nature. Then here is some quote from Thomas Aquinas. The natural law is nothing else than the rational creature's participation in the eternal law. Then we see some ideas similar, but we see another word that is eternal law. So what's the relation between the natural law and eternal law? So what's being here, that I present here, these ideas, these components, has already been there either in the Greek tradition or in the Christian's adaptation of the natural law theory in the early church. So what I want to do today is just to take you to go just a little bit journey to see each big step of development in the natural law, starting from the Greek philosophers till our dear church fathers in Augustine. Okay. So let's start from the Greek philosophy. It is in the Greek philosophy that we first encounter the concept of natural law in terms of it is nature and it's not. It is natural and it's law. And what is nature? Nature is actually quite complicated, but if we put a very simplified version, everything in the world has nature. At least Greeks believe that everything has a nature. Not only that, but the same kind of thing, this is everything has a nature, but the same kind of thing has the same nature, which is a universal nature, like these are all humans, and then these are all food, then these are all animals. Yeah. So, welcome. So these are the universal natures. It's not like the individual thing. Each thing has a nature, but then you have a common concept, or common concept that describes its certain kind of things as a group that they have a nature. Aside from that, so beyond that, you have different categories or species. Yeah, so we talked about that in class. Genus and species. Then, when we go up, then at least Greeks believes that at the end there's a first principle or one principle that unifying all the things in the world, that kind of giving them the nature. So this first principle not only rules the physical world, but also penetrates the human society as its underlying principle. So nature, in this way, refers to the unifying cosmic principle. As the principle applies to human society as well, it relates to moral rules or law or justice. So the Greeks came up with these ideas that, aside from the individual nature or nature as a species or genus, then at the end, there's the first principle that unifies everything. It's because, they believe that there's a certain kind of deity that actually gave the world the order. So slowly there came the idea of some divine laws that's been given by the divinity or the deity. For example, in Heraclitus, that is pre-Socrates philosopher, is saying all human laws are nourished by one that is divine. It has power so much as it will, it suffices for all things, and is superior to all. This law from the divine, they call it also the unwritten law. The unwritten law for Heraclitus is related to the essential Greek concept logos. And here's a quote that you see as relation. Yet behind all change, behind all opposites, and behind all dispute, there is an ultimate which binds together in a harmonious union all that is contradictory, namely the logos. It is the law of the world, the impersonal world reason, which guides and directs everything and produces the dialectical change of opposites, like coming into being and passing away. Human soul has a share in the logos, in reason. So here we can see some important ideas and also reflects what is the logos. At first, logos, the unwritten law underlies and explains all the changes in the world. So the mystery for the philosophers in the very beginning is why everything's changed, right? Well, why everything coming to being and then going to die. We can never really grasp the moment, one moment as to make it eternal, yeah. No matter how much we want it. Then notice how he said that logos is the law is the reason, and it is the impersonal world reason. It is impersonal. Then this reason or logos or law that gives a order to the world, a harmonious unity that means order. And finally, the same logos resides in human soul. That's how that we are able to know it, discover it, and live up to it. So these main points of ideas of what is logos and its relation with law, then I summarize here as 4 points. Logos is the unchangeable law of the universe. The unchangeable law explains all the changes in the world. And logos is the reason of the universe, the impersonal reason. It resides in human soul as well, so that human beings can have reason and can think and understand with that reason. So this is pre-Socrates, but as time goes by, then history went on. Then we have a change in the political and social situation in the 5th century BC that just bring this very simple or very beautiful belief in the divine law controlling the whole world, give it a little bit challenge. That is, what happened is there were more frequent travel and trade, involves even trading slaves, and in this process, then there are more like mutual negotiation and coming with agreements, and kind of law becomes, in many cases, becomes a mutual agreement. Then there's another thing is there's a severe war that is the Peloponnesian War, and it ends in many small city-states were forced to change their law and institutions. So what people seeing then starts to see is that, well, laws are not eternal. They are not really reflecting the eternal harmonic order. Laws can be changed. So the belief in the divinity of the law being challenged, and laws are proved to be transient, not everlasting. So here arose the question whether the transient laws express the divine everlasting law. If not, then if laws are only man-made, then why should man obey laws with sense of pious obligation? Why we have to obey laws if laws are not sacred, are not divine? So here comes another group of philosophers and made a lot of discussions about nature and law. Nomos, sorry, there's a typo here, nomos. Yeah, here's the correct spelling here. So they made a distinction. Physis is nature. It is what is valid by nature. And they see here is what we call, here lies the universal divine law as how we understand, we've seen how they understood it in Heraclitus. And this is the unwritten law. That's not written by us. It's either by God or it's at least it's not man-made. But nomos is what we call law, is what is accepted through the law. That is based on consensus or convention. These are man-made, written laws. So they start to make these two distinctions, kind of having two ideas, nature and law. And as we can see, natural law is actually nature and law, right? Natural law. But here's a distinction. We get to know that these are two things. So then the next step is to see how they relate to each other. Of course, there are a lot of discussions by these philosophers. I just want to skip them. Otherwise, you are not able to go back home today. Yeah? And jump directly to Socrates and Plato. So briefly about Socrates, he tries to root the law in nature. For him, yes, what is good is what facilitates or nourishes the actual nature of things. And he saw it is a divine providence that defines the nature of all things. But it is Plato who really systematically developed Socrates' ideas based on his dualism structure of the world. I think you all know too well of it. The realm of ideas and the material world. It is in the realm of ideas, then we have the real reality there. But material world, the world actually we're in are just shadows and images. That's something that gives us a hope that the real thing is yet to come, right? Then we find in the material world only share the material world, because it's shadows, so it can only share partially the reality in the realm of the ideas. So in this way, they participate, whatever things in the material world, they participate in the realm of ideas as an image. That's why we find, for example, the perfect human nature, or perfect good, or the good, in the supreme good, in the realm of ideas, where in the material world we find correspondingly each individual human beings who share the human nature, or realize human nature in partially realize it. And then we have found many things good, right? So they share in this goodness. Then in the same way that we can say that there is a divine law, an idea of a divine law, in the realm of ideas. And then in the real world, we have law in many different forms, actually just realized in different states. and or even just in many, many detailed laws. So in this way, then, we can say that the divine law is kind of what traditionally, conventionally called the unwritten law, even though he's not really saying that. And the law in the material world, all the actual laws are the written laws. The relation can be compared to as the relation between the idea and things in the idea. The relation between ideas and their actualization, realization in the material world. So the divine law is the source for the written law, and the actual laws in the world are imitations. So then the question is, what is the divine law for Plato? Well, this is something that we need to start not from a law, but from what is the ultimate end or goal of our life or the world, is the supreme idea in the realm of ideas, that where all the other ideas comes from, that is the supreme good. The supreme good is the rule of our life and is the end of the state for Plato. And so all our life, the ultimate end of our life, end of state, is to realize the good. And how the good is to be realized is by the principle of justice. What is justice? Justice in this context means harmony, both of individual persons or states. In terms of individual persons, the harmony is the harmony of its three souls. It's all we're talking about, the realm of ideas, right? So in there, what we have is the soul. It's a harmony between the three parts of the soul, and it's a hierarchy: reason, spirit, and desire. And in the harmony in a state is realized in the hierarchy of, different people, right? Citizens. So in general, it's not really that simple, but just to let you see which kind of hierarchy it means. For example, you have rulers in the top, then auxiliaries like warriors, soldiers, who guards, protect the states. Then you have the producers, who's making things. So supreme good is realized in justice. Justice is the harmony. Harmony is realized in an order, in a hierarchy of the different faculties in a person, and the different persons are citizens in the state. So this harmony or this justice is what he calls the divine law. Divine law is a justice, the principle of justice. What I think from here you can already see that in Plato's idea, in a state, he doesn't have this idea of equality among citizens as what we now understand it. So in his picture of the state, slavery is totally acceptable. Okay, so this is in the realm of ideas. Then if we go to how it's being really realized in the material world, then we need to take into account that in concrete state, the primary concern is not the law itself, because the law is primarily the justice. So the concern is how to reach justice and how to realize the supreme good and order. And thinking how varied the situation from one state to another, and how different human beings are, one from the other. from one another in their characters and their capacities. So in order to achieve justice in each specific situation, Plato thinks what we need primarily is not law, but is practical wisdom, which is more important than fixed laws. Only those who have the practical wisdom to judge each situation are those who have the knowledge of the ultimate good and just. So they have the knowledge of the realm of ideas. Sorry. Oh, I jumped a slide. Sorry. Too many enemies. Yeah. So those who have the practical wisdom to guarantee the justice in a state, they have the knowledge of the realm of ideas in terms of they know what is divine law, what is justice, what is nature, what is good. And then they also have this ability and wisdom to apply these in each concrete situation. So it is not a wisdom that each one of us have. It is, for him, is commanded by, possessed by philosopher king. So in an ideal state, it's not ruled by law. Ideal state is ruled by philosopher king, who has their soul traveled to the realm of ideas and then coming back. And then use their knowledge to give instruction, give rule to the whole state. And this, so because of this, so all the others who are not that able should be obedient to the philosopher king. Only when this is not able to reach, like for example, you do not have anyone really can be the philosopher king, then we would use law or the positive laws as a way to guarantee to maximize the good, the harmony, the justice in the state. So this is the secondary kind of state. So what here you see is Plato starts from the nature. What is our nature that to realize the good? What is the nature in the realm of ideas? And then he sees the importance of law, but at the end, in the material world, the realization of this divine law is not only through law, it can through a super ruler. So kind of, he had the separation of the nature and the law, again. So some modern philosophers actually really seeing that, and seeing that Plato is actually proposing a natural right instead of natural law. Yeah. So we can see there's tension between nature and law in his theory. And I would say that as I see it, it kind of relates to for him that the state is essential for man's realization of the nature. And we can see the same vision is with Aristotle as well. So let's move on to Aristotle. For Aristotle, man is the same with Plato, that man is by nature a political being. The polis state. The state is where human beings realize their potential of being human beings. And so state is a necessity for nature. Laws are made according to human nature, which assist them to realize their nature in the state. Oh, yeah, I have the quote here. So why we need law is because we need to realize human nature in the state. And then he distinguished two kinds of laws, specific law and universal law. Specific laws are those which each community lays down and applies to its own members. So it's So it's partially written and partially unwritten, he's saying. And the universal law is a law which is based on our nature. So together with these two different laws, then there are two different kinds of justice for him. Specific laws give rise to the conventional political justice, which is a matter of agreement. And universal law deals with the natural justice. So natural justice is something is universally valid between states, and is unaffected by the view one may take of its justice. But the thing is, it's not clear whether for Aristotle the universal law is superior to the specific law. It seems like it's not. It's more just universal law is more general and specific law is more specific. It's just like two different kinds of laws. But his concept of natural law does not simply mean that certain ethical or legal principles are universal. But for him, there's an initial intelligible being designs the universe and gives it a universal principles. Here. So we know for Aristotle, each thing has its final cause to explain its existence and its change. Everything moves towards the end of its being. So eventually everything has the initial intelligible being as the end, which it moves to. So the intelligible being designs the universal principle by which each thing, the universe, can move towards. So even though Aristotle is aware that laws in reality are changeable and varied from state to state, since they're subject to concrete situations just like here, or culture or history of a state, but the universal law and the natural justice goes with it, serve as the transcendental goal towards which human law and justice tends to. So in this way, he sees there are two different kinds of law, and in each state, there is the presence of these two kinds of laws, but they are not totally separate. Still, the specific laws are tending towards the universal law, and the universal law is the inequality of the specific laws. So another feature here of Aristotle's idea of law is his famous rejection of all equality. I typo again here. Utilitarianism. So he's seen that by nature, some people are just fitting to be rulers, and some are just fitting to be the subject. Not everyone is equal. So here we've seen Plato and Aristotle. Both of them, their focus in exploring this law and nature is the realm of state. The unwritten law has to be limited one way or another, and nature and law constantly have certain tension with each other. It is the Stoics who gave the most mature idea of natural law in Greek philosophy. And their ideas closely relate to the social and political change at that time. That is the decline of state and the expansion of Alexander the Great. This change gives people, replace the sense of a state for most citizens with the sense of the world and universe. They are a citizen of the universe, not only a state. And their life is defined not by the state, but the whole universe. Aside from that, then Stoics synthesized several trends in philosophy before. One is the Heraclitean concept of logos that we just seen in the beginning of the lecture. Then the ethical and teleological idea of classical period, that is the teleology, everything's going towards its end. Yeah, so we already mentioned that as well in Aristotle. Then we have this egalitarianism. Yeah, this is the correct spelling. So they synthesize these three notions together. What has a primary importance in their natural law theory is the idea of logos. For them, logos there is a logos that penetrates the universe, moving everything to its end. And they also call it nature and law. So it is the first time that we see nature, law properly united in the idea of logos. On the other side, logos is found in everything rational, like rational interrelations of things, rational system of logical norms found, or human reason itself, which is a universal bounder. So, because logos is not only found in things, but also found in human reason just logos, so logos is entity in man, and it's being perceived by means of what they call intuitive preconceptions. And here, the preconceptions or intuitive preconceptions is the inner intuition which provides the general and common notions of or universals, and comes as a gift of nature, which later is called common notions. The common notions are inborn and they're natural. They are different from the knowledge that derived from experience. They are just building you. So we just have an intuitive preconception of, logos. Then with the logos, nature and law come together, Stoics naturally came up with an idea of natural law which rests on the idea of logos. And here's kind of like a definition as the law of nature is a universally valid rational law resting in the nature of man and in the constitution of the universe. So here essentially the natural law is universal, and it is rational, it is reason, and both in the nature of man and in the universe as a whole. What dramatically distinguishes Stoic from, So what is another feature of, Stoics' idea of natural law is their exaltation of natural law to the position of God. Here's a quote from Zeus, their founder. The universal law which exists, from Zeno. The universal law which exists in rich reason and which pervades everything is identical with Zeus, the guider of world order. So we see the key terms here, law, reason, and Zeus, becomes almost like synonyms here, almost equivalent with each other. So for Stoics, the natural law is almost equivalent to reason, to logos, and to God. This applies to the ethical world life, or the impact is to live according to the nature becomes an incumbent duty for everyone. And then the common notions, the intuitive preconceptions we mentioned just in the previous slide, means that in the moral sphere, all of us have a certain instinctive knowledge of good in general, of the particular virtues and of the existence of God. So yeah, these are just the common notions that are innate in us, in every one of us. These notions can be supported by mutual agreement among people, but they do not derive from there, and they cannot be refuted by disagreement. So since natural law applies to everybody in the sense that we all have to live according to nature, and we all have the instinctive knowledge of good and virtue, the Stoics brought another fundamental change to the understanding of natural law, that is egalitarianism, that all men potentially equal under God due to their dignity, even though that they still admit that most people are not as smart as philosophers. And there's a difference in their social status. Yeah. So this Stoic natural law theory that later on been developed by Cicero, who you all read his Latin, right? And who relates the law of nature, the natural law, to or apply it to the political institutions, yeah. Then dramatically influenced the Roman law, and then especially with his idea of the eternal law. So in the beginning we say natural law relates to the eternal law, and here it comes. We see several of his main ideas. First is he assorts law to the divine position to the point that he's saying the meaning of life, everyone's meaning of life, is to pursue law. I'm not saying to pursue good or happiness, as Aristotle says, but to pursue law. So we are born for justice. And he's seen that by perception, reason, and sense of justice, we're all akin to God, and so can participate in the ultimate principle of law by which God rules the universe. So we are also able to. Then there's an eternal law based on nature, which is the law of reason. And so affected by human, it's not affected by human opinion, sorry. And then all laws are but the expressions or applications of this essential law of nature. And then man has an innate intuition to know the eternal law. So in theory, all laws should be in conformity with natural law, but in reality, oftentimes, laws are not, just do not reflect the natural law. Then Cicero seeing why is that? He's explaining the reason and seeing that it lies in that even though that we all have a natural disposition to law and justice, but on the other hand, that quite often we are corrupted by evil. So because of this, the laws are contaminated. That's why it is necessary for the state to restrain those who are corrupted by evil by kind of human law. So this idea again goes later to Augustine's distinction later between human law and natural law. But once we've seen here in Stoics, law is made equivalent to nature, and being rooted in the divine reason, being exalted to the status of divine and eternal, and humans have the intuition to know the law. Natural law theory is very much compatible with Christians' belief of a creator who creates and sustains the world with his wisdom, granting order to the world and made man in his own image so that we can know his wisdom through the creatures. So these just become highly compatible. And we're seeing the idea of the natural law, or what comes with it, the intuition, comes in, being there in Christian thoughts, especially in the New Testament. And here that I quote Romans, that natural law is as something that's written by God in man's heart. All who have sinned apart from the law will also perish apart from the law, and all who have sinned under the law will be judged by the law. For it is not the hearers of the law who are righteous in God's sight, but the doers of the law who will be justified. When Gentiles who do not possess the law do instinctively what the law requires, though not having the law, are a law to themselves. They show that what the law requires is written on their heart, to which their own conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts will accuse or perhaps excuse them. So quite clearly, these ideas are similar to the Stoics' ideas, and the later, this is the root where then later Augustine developed his own theory of natural law. Augustine is very much influenced by the Stoics, and his natural law, even though he does not really talk a lot about natural law, but they have also a fundamental influence on St. Thomas Aquinas' theory of natural law later. But what we can see in Augustine, his limited writings on the natural law, is that he's really taking in that Stoic or the Greek idea, and at the same time he adapted he put in his unique Christian perspective. So what are the critical notions shaped Augustine's understanding of natural law? First, he's emphasized on the harmony and order of the universe. This relates to his break with Manichaeism, because Manichaeism believed in the dualism of good, evil, and light and darkness. And when he turned to the Neoplatonism, and later, what the idea that he takes from there is evil is but the privation of the good. And once he goes to the Christianity, then he has the full version of God created the world is good, and world is harmonious. And on the other hand, equally important is the idea of logos, which is in, first of all, the Gospel of John. Logos became flesh, what impressed him a lot. And logos is with God the Father in the beginning, creation through the logos, and also in his context that is after the Nicene Council, that logos is consubstantial with the Father. So first of all, what is very much emphasized in Augustine's natural law is, first of all, the order of the world, as we see that is also relates to his conversion. The world has an order and has harmony. As he says, there is an order to be found within things and between them, which binds and directs the world. And he sees as the Stoics, that it is the eternal law that gives the universe its order. The eternal law is that law in virtue of which it is just that all things exist in perfect order. But Augustine differs from the Stoics in that for him the eternal law is not personal, but is the divine reason and the divine will. Here's a quote. The eternal law is the divine reason and the will of God which command the maintenance, observance of the natural order of things and which forbids the disturbance of it. The eternal law is the divine will, since we believe in the personal God, who is our creator, who creates the things and directs the path of life and the world. However, the will of God does not give random plans to his creature, but gives a law that is equal to his reason, through which everything gets to realize its nature. So, says Augustine, the eternal law and eternal reason in the divine intellect directs everything to its proper end through proper or consistent mediating factors. So we see how Augustine stands with the Stoics in understanding the eternal law as from the divine origin and being one with the Logos, but at the same time depart from the Stoics because his belief in the personal creator, God who creates and takes care of the world. This theistic eternal law laid the foundation for the whole natural law of the following theory of the following centuries. And St. Thomas Aquinas made a lot of use of Augustine's definition of the eternal law. So again, in Augustine, the eternal law is not exactly the same as natural law. For him, natural law derives from the eternal law, but the eternal law directs all things in the world according to the divine providence, including human soul. And the law directing human soul he calls the natural law. So he says, the natural law is transcribed as a war upon the rational soul, so that in the conduct that of this life and in their earthly ways, men might preserve semblance of working of God. So the natural law is the imprint of the eternal law on human soul. Thus we find in ourselves not only the guiding principles of all practical laws and norms, but also the idea of right and justice. These are again innate in us as intuition or conscience. Then Augustine talking about human conscience in such a paragraph as on the Trinity. When every righteous law is copied and transformed, not by migrating to it, but by being as it were impressed by it, to the heart of the man that works righteousness, but he who works not, and yet sees how he ought to walk, he is the man that is turned away from that light which yet touches him, but he who does not even see how he ought to live, sins indeed with more excuse, because he is not a transgressor of the law that he knows, but even he too is just touched sometimes by the splendor of everywhere present truth, when upon abomination he confesses. So we see something similar to St. Paul saying the heart of the man, and the similar idea to their Stoics' intuitive preconception. Due to the natural law, the conscience or the intuition by which the soul be aware of the natural justice is something roots deeply in our mind, to the point that even in the sinful state, where it says, when we are not able to work good, we still have the conscience of what is right and wrong, and what is justice. Not even the wrong malefactor could completely deprive of this idea. By means of our moral conscience, we remember the eternal law as being always immanent in the natural law and in all natural justice. So finally, for Augustine, there's, aside from the eternal law and it residing in human as natural law, there's again another idea is human law, as what tradition was saying, the written law in the states, in countries. And what is the human law? Is human law are made by humans to rule the secular affairs of man, and they must derive from and be in conformity with the natural law to ensure the law is just. So human law is not irrelevant to the natural law. Augustine thinks that in the beginning there's no need of written law, since natural law is inserted innate in our soul. But human law became necessary because our sinful nature, and because of our evil inclination and vices that made the law obscure in human mind, so that we need human law to manifest the obscured natural law. So that in that way, human law, it actualizes the natural law in the world distorted by sins. So if we go back, this relates to the last point of Cicero, saying that because of the evil in the world or in certain persons, so the natural law oftentimes cannot really be realized. So that's why we need law to restrict these people. And here is a connection with that idea with Cicero, and to hear Augustine's idea on this human law. Also because why we need human law is because of our sinful nature. Finally, there's a difference in the purpose of natural law and human law. In natural law is to promote virtuous life and aim at a life of eternal blessedness, but human law is just to ensuring the order and harmony of human society, prevention and the restriction evildoers. But in that way that it leads us to manifest the natural law. So to summarize, Augustine distinguished three levels of law. First is eternal law. That is the divine reason and divine will, which granting the universe its order. While the eternal resides in human soul, it becomes natural law. So natural law is the imprint and the manifestation of the eternal law. It manifests eternal law by adopting ethical life, and we are all able to do so since due to the presence of natural law in our soul, we have naturally the intuitive conscience of right and wrong. However, due to our sinful nature, we were not able to follow the intuition. That is why we need human law to modify our behaviors, so to make us behave according to natural law as much as possible. In this way, the purpose of human law is to actualize the natural law. So in this map, in this picture, the natural law is really the center, which reflects the eternal law, eternal reason, the divine will, and which human law serves and should conform to. So what we see is that natural law theory starts from the belief that each individual thing has its nature, and to the idea that there is a universal nature or principle penetrating the whole universe, both the natural world and our human society. But only in the natural law there can be be order in the society, and humans are able to realize their nature, good, and their happiness. So for this reason, human law, which tailors specific situations of each individual society, should be in conformity with the natural law. In other words, the written law based on mutual agreement should be based on written law based on human nature. But this all makes sense only when we suppose there's a law or rule penetrating or principle penetrating the universe, which grant each thing its nature. And this idea is clearly present in Stoics, However, it is in the Christian belief that it is God, the Creator, who grants the law according to his reason and his will, that the faith in the unity of nature and law can have a well-rooted foundation. So for me, Augustine is not only transformed the natural law theory to Christian context, but also he gave natural law theory a better grounding, which forms the foundation for the later, more advanced theory of natural law, such as in St. Thomas Aquinas. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for being here for a long time.